the question um, about his son Isaac being offered as a sacrifice, it was the Creator saying to Abraham, "This is not what I want." So these rituals, especially when it comes to females, were not instituted until religion became systematized.
So was that during the time of the priest?
But yes, yes. It was. I honestly, I'm not even sure that Aaron understood what the priesthood was supposed to be about. Because if you look at what's going on here, what happened with these rituals, you see a lot of them were brought out of Egypt. And you would see also that some of the rituals like Hanukkah was not celebrated by the Sumerians, but it was by the Southern Kingdom. So, regardless of whether it was the Northern or the Southern Kingdom, regardless whether it was the people in the wilderness, you could begin to see from the wilderness experience a move towards the domination of females. Because you remember, Miriam had say-so. She had input, serious input. But after Miriam, you began to see a diminishment of that. So,
until Jesus.
Until Jesus. So that's why I say I'm constantly at odds with this Levitical law. Because the Levitical law served as a mechanism to put all authority and power in the hands of the male. And in doing so, also made the creator of everything male.
What we talked about a little bit last week about was also the fact that, this is what I'm thinking. You always drop bombs and then you leave for a day or so. And we have to pick pieces up and try to process. Like the bomb squad, But what we talked about was the fact that it's things like this, not the physical, not just the equality of pay and all that stuff.
Right.
It's the spiritual essence of what the woman brings to the equation. And every time she has a cycle, it's a recreation of creation.
Yes.
In a sense.
Yes.
And to call that a curse is to curse the essence of where you came from.
Well, life itself.
Yes. So, and it's only until we begin to embrace it, will others embrace it.
Right.
I mean, men can say it all day long, but it's us who have to embrace it. And Evelyn brought up an interesting point last week too. She said, "Well, what about us who are our own cycles anymore?" Well, we talked about the fact that there is no time in the spiritual.
Right.
So the essence of thought, et cetera, is the same. And so we still have that opportunity to contribute to the macro of women accepting their role, their spiritual role.
I think it's deeper than that, Robert.
What?
The reason I say that is because if you really think about it, when we grew up, the older women in the community were considered the wise women. They were the wisdom of the neighborhood. They were not having cycles. So when the article that Janice had sent, when I read that when a woman's cycle ceased, it meant that she became wiser because life was still in her. She was not shedding it every month. It dawned on me that it could that be the reason that the older women were considered, the sources of wisdom, because of that ingrained, belief without knowing the reason you're saying it, but somewhere inside of you, the truth of it is there. Can you see that? So I really believe that we're on to something because sex and menstrual cycles are the taboo. They're taboos of the church. You can talk about anything else in church except sex and a menstrual cycle. And if the thing that is the source of life is controlled by me, then I control life. And that's the whole gist of thing. What have men been trying to do for the longest? Create life without a woman in a petri dish.
And it just magnifies itself on the physical level too.
Yes.
I control
And that's
legislation, I control.
That's the manifestation of it in a nutshell. It really is. What bomb did I drop? What bomb did I drop in lady?
The thing about the
Menstrual cycle.
about the woman and what did you say?
I don't know.
You said I mean the whole issue you brought up about the menstrual cycle being a reminder that the womb is the source of our life,
Yeah.
and Adamo is feminine, and we just talked about the issues of, we started talking about misogyny a little bit, and why was there hatred of females, and which led to opening up what was going on and why the importance of the feminine energy. Men beat, demean, badger women because they are insecure.
And that's
So
the idea of life coming from the womb. To me, it is simply saying that this is the thing to be protected as opposed to being diminished.
and to honor.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And that's why indigenous women came together during the cycles. And they talked about stuff.
And the Hopi, we talked about that with the Hopi women, the Dogon in Africa. They went to the lodges, and they, like the other thing you reminded us of is back then women were on the same cycle.
Yeah.
And they have the synthetic light and stuff to get things all out of whack. They were on the same cycle, and so the tribe or the group honored the fact that they had to go and be together, and they drew from the spiritual while they were there because they were looking forward to their coming out.
Right.
And say, they got insight. Where should we go for buffalo? Where should we, that kind. What does the tribe need to focus on?
And that was it until when? Until European Christianity came into the picture.
Screwed everything up. Just jump in.
I want to go back to Sage when you were talking about mankind trying to create life. What would be the purpose behind mankind wanting to create life?
Mankind doesn't. European Christians
Okay.
do control life for the same reason Nimrod brought people to him to be worshipped.
Say that again?
For the same reason Nimrod brought people to him to be worshipped. That's the whole reason for it.
But doesn't that fly in the face of their belief that life is sacred and God, oriented?
And here we go again. We're right back at the same place. When we talk when we talk about how this comes about, we're talking about religious policy as opposed to religious reality. Who developed the policies? Males. So what I'm saying is, religion was never intended to be burdensome. Neither was it intended to be something separate from us, from your life. It was never intended to be a part of your life, but always to a journey to understand your life. And what happened, it has become a part of life with multiple gods, multiple creators. If I am a Baptist or a Methodist or a Catholic, all three of these are supposed to be Christian denominations, are they not?
Mm-hmm.
So, if I believe that my Creator wants me to baptize a baby at birth, and you don't believe that as a Baptist, then you believe in the wrong Creator. You see what I'm talking about? So we develop all these things that has subconsciously led us to a place of multiple creators. However, if we look at the question of baptism from the perspective of being immersed in a true understanding of the nature of who we are, then all of us are on the same page, as opposed to these being rituals that we carry out. It is amazing to me how, on one hand, you can say that the menstruating woman who is bleeding, of course, is someone who should not be touched, but should be ostracized for a period. And if a Samaritan is bleeding alongside the road, you leave it, if you are from the Southern Kingdom. And the significance of that is this: when they say from Jerusalem to Jericho, that meant that the priests had been to Jerusalem to do their priestly duties and on their way back to Jericho, because that's where the priests lived. 35 miles between the two. So the woman had to be ostracized. The one who you shun had to be left to die. But the people who look like you or believe like you could take care of them.
Well, religion always did the opposite of it.
Well,
The truth,
I'm,
right?
I'm not there yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm back at how the priesthood got to where it is.
Okay.
When we look at that, and then we hear where they say, this is what the Lord said in terms of the Levitical law.
Okay.
Well, Isaiah said, that the Creator said, I didn't institute any rituals, any holy days, no sacrifices whatsoever. Jeremiah says the same thing. Micah says the same thing. So if all of these prophets are to be believed, then how can they be in such contrast to the Levitical law? Because they are totally contradictory when it comes to the Levitical law. Not only that, if the life is in the blood and you really believe that, are you saying that the life is in all blood except minister blood? Because it doesn't say that. And if you truly believe that the life is in the blood, then how can you shun someone whose womb is a reminder every month of the source of life?
Wow.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. Where does the whole concept of blue moon come from? It's not talking about the moon blue. It's talking about a lunar eclipse with the red, the light from around like spears of light is red. And it is indicative of a menstruating woman. That's how other cultures saw it.
So how did it get the term blue?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
What was
Rarely
that?
happens.
Yeah, really, every blue moon. Really
Is that
happens.
being significant tying into when you think of
Thank you. I couldn't think of
the
it.
color? What is it? The chakras, the blue is the ultimate color at the top. Is that
I don't know. I
okay?
don't know whether there's a connection or not, but I do know that it comes from something that really happens.
Okay.
Blue, I think blue with the chakra is the road. Indigo is here.
The other thing is that the whole world is going to see it.
Yeah, I'll make sure I'll be
The
outside.
whole world. Like it's what, 6:45 in the morning here. Yeah. So,
Well, there
but
was the one last night, blue silhouette. Cause I stood outside and looked at it.
Yeah.
It was blue silhouette.
and there are truly different things happening. And all of them are in relationship to the female. And I can't for the life of me embrace the concept that there is something dirty about administrating women. And this is the funny thing. I'm thinking as I sit here, there has never been a stigma attached to administration in my house, even when I was growing up. There's never been a stigma attached to it. Because I can remember going to the store to get pads as a little boy. But there's never been a stigma attached to it.
Well, Mom would always say another woman is in the family.
Yeah. And I don't know what they said to each other because I don't remember when they came home.
Yeah,
But I knew what you were.
yeah,
But I didn't understand the nature of the course.
right.
I say it, and maybe I'm crazy for saying it. I believe that this is my purpose because everything points to, in my childhood, points to never being traumatized, stigmatized by anything that happened to females as opposed to other people in the neighborhood. They were like, that's never been part of me. I don't know. So last week, I don't know exactly well, all the things that you touched on.
We had an awesome
That I do know. That I do know. I do not believe that I was supposed to be in art reading faith last week because of the nature of what was taught, and both of them involved in their understanding of feminism. And I don't mean feminism in terms of what's being manifested, but what's real. So, your mother too said. Are there any questions or comments for that matter? I was sharing before some of you got here that during the course of my battle with this flu, it wasn't me battling, it was me fighting what was happening to my body. And I could see that. And I felt like my actual body was encapsulated in a spore or a shell that was shaped like my body, but it was not touching the walls of my being. And I still feel that way. And my experience was that I was fine. But it was my body that wasn't. And I can't explain the difference between the two. But in thinking, the essence of me was always a constant view of my body and what it needed. And it had nothing to do with me. being sick, me being ill, me feeling bad, because I didn't. But I knew my body did. And from Wednesday the 17th until Wednesday of this week, I lived off pineapples and juice and water. The soups I couldn't eat. There's nothing else fazed me. Now I could not focus, however, I felt like I was having an intra-womb experience. It was like at night I felt enclosed, when I was asleep especially. And I was cognizant of the fact that I wasn't
screen. I don't understand
I
why,
felt
but
like
it's
I was eating
screen,
something. And
right?
honestly,
It was going fine. Then it just froze
I
up.
felt like my body was not going to survive it. And
Just let it screen for right now.
Did you feel like a cocoon, like you were in a cocoon?
no, it
Just
didn't
like
feel
the
like
case in the juice.
I can't even explain it. It was light and dark. But I can't explain it. Everything around me was dark, but it was light. So it was and still is a different experience. I have never experienced it in my life.
No.
Imani tried to be funny. When she said to me, said Clark, she said Clark. And
Thank you. Sure. I didn't
I
want
have
to do
never
that.
seen my daddy as well.
I got
I even got to know it.
She gets you every time.
I have never experienced having been enclosed for that long. So anyway, I think it does have something to do with what we've been discussing. I really think it does. I also think that when we look at the things that were used for menstrual cycles, we see something. What we see is the further religion got away from the Creator in terms of its rituals, the further men drew women away from natural, for lack of a better term, natural means of dealing with the menstrual cycle, the further away, the more of a curse it became. In the beginning, it was sheep's wool, then cotton or linen rags, synthetics. Remember? You remember the epidemic with the tampons?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
All of these things, and the further we got away from the natural aspects of it, the more of the curse it became in terms of being embraced. Now, this is the other thing I want to point out, is that the church has never cared anything about females. The Christianity that we profess has its roots in European Christianity. European Christianity has seen women as nothing more than objects of pleasure and labor. That's it. And it's still that way today. How is it that you are so moral, and when this man is caught having paid a porn star to be intimate with, when you are approached, Mr. Evangelical, you say we give him a money, we give him a pass. How can you?
Because they all doing it too.
How can you do that?
Yeah.
And at the same time, maintain your morality, self-defined, of course. Now,
See, that's what I'm waiting on, though, and it started, is sexual harassment and assault in the church.
well, it's coming.
It's coming.
But I see just as important as that is understanding the nature of intercourse itself in relationship to menstrual cycle, in relationship to male-female relationship. Because where does the most stringent beliefs about sexual intercourse, where did it come from? The same source that stigmatized females for having a period. The same source that sees females as objects. So it's something wrong with our view of intimacy in terms of physical manifestation of intimacy. Something is wrong with that. Something is extremely wrong with that. We cannot continue to follow the definitions or understandings of what life is that has been given to us by those who really don't care about life itself. We have to redefine, or at the very least, we have to revisit everything about this thing called morals or morality, because it's so different. The definition on I was speaking with someone, and they said to me, in relationship to the woman at the well, it says that you have 5 husbands, and the one that you're with is not yours. And I was raising the question, what does that mean? Well, all he said was, you've been married 5 times.
Yeah, you don't look at it that way.
That's all he said. You've been married 5 times, but now
Right.
you ain't. What is he saying? You've been married 5 times, but now you have let yourself become somebody's concubine.
Wow.
That's all he was saying. He was saying that you have allowed yourself to become someone who is used for sexual purposes.
Right there in plain sight.
That's what he was saying.
Wow.
That's what I'm talking about when I say we need to revisit stuff. You know, the things that we believe. Because this whole concept of becoming one is based upon materialism. It's based upon inheritance, isn't it? Think about it. It's based upon being able to inherit property. You've heard me say this many times. There are some people who are a deeper place of marriage with people they don't live with than the one who they got the paper with. Why? Because we have simply embraced what we've been told as opposed to embracing what we have seen, what we have experienced. And an example of that is this. There was a period of time when it was against the law for slaves to marry. Did you know that? A slave could not marry. So, after slavery, what happened? Okay, y'all get married now. So who is it that defines for us what a relationship is supposed to be about? The same one who enslaved. You see how crazy this is?
Well, the same thing with family situations. Back then, they sell your children, split up families, blah 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 blah. Now they berate us because we don't have any family values.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. What is family value?
Yeah.
What does that consist of?
Quote unquote family values.
And one that was always in our face that I think we miss also. Well, I know we miss. How many of you tip people who go to a restaurant? Seriously, all of them.
Mhm.
Do you know why?
I saw it on the news.
In 1865, it came from slavery.
Explain that to me, Sage. I hadn't.
In 1865, Europeans were tipping the royalty. They were tipping the people. It's like throwing crumbs at them, waiting on them for serving them. And it was brought to this country in 1865 to New York after slavery. And those who were fresh out of slavery looking for jobs were told they had to wait tables, and whatever they received as payment for waiting tables would be based upon what the people gave them. That was tips. That's where it came from.
Wow.
Now, the other thing that I saw in that, it did not take it long for the main people who became servants at that table for tips were females.
Is that the reason also why they don't pay
$2.
anything for?
Yeah. It's $2 something an hour, $2.25 or something like that an hour. But that's because the Restaurant Association the petitioner, they lobbied for that to separate those salaries from minimum wage. But that's another example of expressive disrespect for females and not a continuation of slavery as much as it is a transfer of ownership. Or end of slavery rather, as much as a transfer of ownership, because that's what took place in transfer. The state owners now selling individuals. You see what I'm talking about? We're owned by the state. And it has morphed into something beyond the ownership of people based on color. Slavery has morphed into something that's based upon economics.
Based upon what?
Economics. It's based upon economics. It's not based upon the color of the skin anymore. Now, to a greater degree, it will be. The reason I say that is because if you want to look at it, the one who is at the most difficult place to move economically are people of color. But it has not worked out that way.
Why?
Because we quietly do things. Black Wall Street was not built with government help. Black Wall Street was built from keeping white folks' children, washing their steps, cutting their wood. That's what Black Wall Street was built from. Okay. And it was quietly done, and when they realized what was happening, they destroyed it. Quietly as it's kept, there are pockets of poverty in the African American community, but there's no widespread poverty at all. 74% of all African Americans are in middle income positions. So it's how things are going. It's and again, it's built on the backs of females. When they talk about it, you remember the thing they say the African American female say the white female again? No. Mm-mm. The African American female say the word. no matter how beaten she has been, she's always been the phoenix of everything. No matter how beaten down she may be, she always rises. Always.
Still I rise.
And what I'm saying is nothing to diminish masculinity at all. But what I am saying is that is the way it's supposed to be. Because that's the way it was from the beginning. The newness of life cannot be birthed unless it's birthed by a menstruating female. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. Without the shedding of blood, the Aramaics say there is no salvation from sin. The scriptures, according to Paul, speaks of redemption by the blood. Are you familiar with that? Being redeemed by the blood.
Yeah.
First of all, Jesus said, drink of this cup. This is my wine, right? This is my blood, which is shed, right?
Mhm.
For our salvation from sin. He did that as a reminder of where the newness of life comes from. He was referencing not the blood that he shed from his body, but the blood that's also shed at 2 times. It's to the menstrual cycle, but also blood is shed at birth.
At what?
Birth. You see what I'm talking about? Jesus was not just referring to that. Then, if this is talking about redemption, then you have to ask yourself, to whom was the payment made? If redemption was by the blood, who made the payment? I mean, to whom was it made? Because, no, there is no such thing. If I redeem you, I have to pay somebody for you, right?
Oh, yes, yes, I got you now. Okay.
So who is greater than the Creator? Who is so great, so much greater than the Creator, that the Creator had to pay them in order to redeem what it already owns. So it's not about redemption. It's about salvation, deliverance. And it has nothing to do with what we think it does. It's talking about being disentangled from all of those things that forms or cobwebs over the eye that was given to us so we could be aware that we are truly one with the Creator, and our essence is entangled with the Creator as opposed to, well, organized with the Creator as opposed to being entangled with material things and selfishness. Does that make sense?
No, it does. I kind of lost me. I got kind of lost.
Yeah, me. Well,
It's not about redemption, is my
I'm
point.
trying to find out what's the difference between redemption and salvation.
If you redeem a slave, that means you paid for him. You
Okay.
bought his freedom.
Right.
If you deliver a slave, you must took it. You pay no money.
If you delivered.
Yeah. If you deliver him from slavery,
Okay.
you took it. You just took it. You didn't pay him. So if you have to be redeemed, that's payment.
Yeah, I got it now, but I got lost.
It's like you remember A&P used to have stamps.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do with them? You redeemed them.
Yeah.
You turned them in for something.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I bring that up also is because if Isaiah writes in 66 Isaiah I just remember in Micah, in the 4th chapter of Michael, and I just remember in Jeremiah, but it would be easily found. If they write that the Lord said, I did not ask you for a sacrifice. If Isaiah writes that to kill a boy or an ox is no different than killing a man, and talks about how pagan it is, or how much of an iniquity it is to kill somebody for sacrifice, something for sacrifice. If that is an iniquitous thing, then how can you say that the very one who said that through Isaiah delivered his son for sacrifice? That's human sacrifice. That doesn't make sense to me. It is just utterly confusing. And I say all of this to help us to, at the very least, begin to rethink or to revisit our thoughts about this whole thing that has as its foundation European philosophy masquerading as Christianity. What'd you find out?
Well, yeah, redemption means to buy or to ransom or to buy back.
Yeah. and that's these are simply to raise questions, to challenge everything, because we have to dispense with this belief of the multiplicity of creators in terms of there not being an insult or a supreme being above everything that is. We have to dispense with that. And the only way we can do that, I believe, is to dispense with these religious rituals and ethics and see what the words are actually saying to us. And when we look at, even with the Samaritans were despised. But the word Samaris, is a Hebrew word that has as its root a keeper or a guard. And the Samaritans saw themselves as the keepers of the light.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look further at that, what do you see? You see Jesus telling this woman, who is now somebody's concubine,
Mm-hmm.
you better than this. He didn't say that in those words, but he said to her, the day is coming. Matter of fact, it's now.
Mm-hmm.
You will not worship in these mountains, not in Jerusalem. What was he saying? He said, listen, this is what you're going to birth. You're going to help them understand, them meaning those who will hear you. This is what they're going to understand. That it's going to be just like it was, as a matter of fact, it's now, just like it was with Abraham. There were no temples. There were no specific geographical locations for worship. Wherever you are, that's where you worship. Why? Because worship is about spiritual essence, spiritual awareness. And they that worship must worship through understanding the truth about their spiritual nature. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes.
Where are you?
It's just occurring to me that, okay, you're talking about the lady at the well who had the 5 husbands. Okay, back then, it was the husband that divorced the woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if she was married 5 times, she had to be divorced 5 times by 5 men or whoever, whatever. So, and it's just occurring to me that because of all these Levitic laws, she was looking for salvation, redemption, whatever you want to call it, through these men, and then through, or whatever they could tell her. But And it's hitting me like a ton of bricks. Jesus is telling her, you don't need them to find your salvation.
As a matter of fact, he's impregnated her
Wow.
with the seed of deliverance.
Yeah. Now you can tell them,
And what did she say?
you don't need them.
Come see a man.
Come
And
see
what
a
did
man.
they say?
Yeah.
What did they say? Now that we have heard, now that we've seen, we believe. In other words, we pay you attention.
Right.
We saw it, we had to see it for ourselves. That's what they said.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same.
Yeah, get out the way.
Yeah.
We'll put our spin on it.
And that's exactly what happened. That's who we are. We are just now recognizing that we're leaving the whale. And it was not in the city, it was on the outskirts of the city. And Jesus could very easily have spoken to her the way that they were permitted to. Water was so scarce until during that period, a man, it was embarrassing for a man to carry water. Man could stop a woman and ask her for a drink of water. She didn't say anything, she just handed it to him. When he got his fill, he gave it back to her. But while she was at the well, there was not a relationship. He was not supposed to have a discussion with her. So Jesus chose to do it at the well. Break down the barrier. What did he say? Read the verses before that. He says, it is necessary for me to go through Samaria. I have need to go through Samaria. It is necessary for me to go to Samaria. That's what he said. Why was it necessary? Because I have to bring this into fruition. What is the this? I have to make the connection between the feminine manifestation and the Shekinah. Because when he said spiritual truth, he's talking about the truth of the Shekinah, which is the what? Feminine aspect of the Creator. So all this whole thing is about that. And quite frankly, I am ready to turn Christianity upside down. I'm ready to do that, even if I have to do it alone. It doesn't matter. My desire is for it to be put in the macro or doors to be open. I don't care. It's time to turn it upside down. Jesus' whole thing was to a female.
This is really radical to me because it's saying to us females that the church has always taught us we needed to go through a husband or a father or whatever male, and that is clearly saying this. You don't need none of that.
You know what else is saying?
It's in you.
The male chose who the female loved.
Yeah.
And when he got tired of loving her, or whatever he got tired of, he just let her go like she did nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
like,
however,
I divorced you.
the same thing today.
Mm-hmm.
A male can love who he wants,
Mm-hmm.
but a female can.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? Decisions are still predicated upon what males believe, as opposed to what the scripture actually is saying. I mean, Mary had a lot of mouth in the scriptures. And Jesus gave too much credence to these females in the scriptures. That kind of stuff. Let me hasten back to something because I want to clear it up.
Okay.
The reason that Jesus was crucified is because of what he believed. That was it. And when it talks about his crucifixion based upon deliverance, right?
Mm-hmm.
The results of is deliverance. All it's saying is that he was crucified for what he believed. And if you believe what he believes, you'll be delivered from all these entanglements. That's it. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. The simplicity of the truth. Yet the complication of it all. Right, Ellie?
It's,
I don't understand how you feel. It's
It's
so
all right.
hard to.
Yeah.
it's,
Just say it. Blurt it out. Whatever
Well,
it is.
yeah. It's gonna take you to do it, a male to do it.
Well, yes, because the male created the mess.
Exactly, and I see you.
See,
Ah.
honestly, I have no issues, since you bring it to that point, I have no issues with being exited from this body and becoming ubiquitous so that it can be done from the other way. I have no issues with that at all. No,
It's heavy.
I have no issues with that. However it must be done is how it must be done. Now, again, this is not about any form of domination.
Right.
This is about awareness of what truth really is. It's about bringing the tree of knowledge of good and evil to a place of balance. It's about understanding, embracing what this thing about living water is. You would ask me for living water if you know who I am. What are you talking about? The living water are the words that I speak. That's what he's talking about. The spiritual words that I speak. This well never runs dry because there is always truth in it. Truth never dries up. Truth does not change. Truth is what it is regardless of what kind of spin you attempt to put on it. It doesn't change. And here we are looking at or faced with an upheaval. And the tears come because people are seeing a political upheaval and an economic shift as opposed to a spiritual reality being birthed into this earth place. Everything that's social and economic has to come to a head. When Revelation talks about the beast, the land beast, it's talking about religion. It's talking about the church. When it talks about the beast from the sea, it's talking about the politics. Because the spirit of the church is politics / economic, money. That's the spirit of the church. And the reason it is represented, the political represented by the beast of the sea, is because it's talking about the spiritual essence of what keeps religions living. It's money. What are we told? The church is a business. Business has to make a profit in order to function, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So whether you say it or not, the expectation is profit if you're a business. You've got to have a profit margin. Now, what is that saying? The beast of religion says that I am the good shepherd. Look at me. I'm the good shepherd. But the scripture says something different. The hireling is the one who does what he does because he gets paid for doing it. He doesn't do it simply because he believes it's right. He does it because he gets paid to do it. The test comes when you begin to ask questions or to inquire about the relationship between money and the leadership in religion. The greatest battles in the congregation are budgetary. They are not spiritual.
Not at all.
None. And so what we were experiencing is the revealing of the power that gives life to religion and the religion that justifies the source of his life. And at the same time, both of them are masculine and has no sense of desire to relinquish any of its power whatsoever. And the only way to maintain power is to maintain control over what you know the true source of power to be. Women. Absolutely. I mean, it's like, you heard me say I'm a kingmaker.
Yeah, you said that in the beginning when I first started.
I'm a kingmaker. If I am the kingmaker, who's the king? Where's the power? You know, if I have 10 people in office, those 10 individuals have power in the office. But I got it on 10. That's what I'm talking about. So whoever has dominance over the power has dominance over you. The other part of it is it is my contention that all forgiveness is feminine. If you look at the nature of forgiveness, the nature of forgiveness is relinquishing the negative energy that's attached to an act or a word or something that was been said about you. It's also about restoration. It's rebirthing something.
Huge essence of it.
Yes. It's rebirthing something. When you make God, Elohim, a man, then you make God vicious. You make God a human sacrificer. You make God a seeker of blood and all this other gory stuff.
And money.
Yeah, when you make it a man. But when you see it for what it is impossible to make it anything at all, because whatever you make it, that's what you are. Because you are its essence, aren't you? And as I said at the onset, you cannot believe that you are created in an image, even if you were created separate entities, and that one has a greater power or dominance over the other. It doesn't make sense. Because if both are created in the image of, both of them have the same essence, right? Both have the same essence. You can't change that. So it's regardless of how you view it, is my point. Whether you see it from spiritual or whether you view it, in the physical, natural manifestation. You cannot change that truth. And that's just real. That's just the way it is. Your punishment is that the man gonna want to dominate you. That's your punishment? But are you punishing me? No, I'm not. You're punishing yourself. You brought this on yourself by virtue of what you did. You brought something into fruition that should not have been birthed. Now he think he over you, and you're going to accept it. And look at the mess that we're in. And I'm not talking about the mess of Donald Trump. It's so far beyond him.
Right.
It's so far beyond him. It's not even funny. I'm talking about the essence of it all. All the stuff that he does is simply stimuli to force people to make some decisions. That's all it is.
I want to ask you something. When we were talking about, and I don't know if everybody was feeling the heaviness that I was feeling when we were just talking about something recently, being radical, you know, you made your comment about everything. But I felt, and going back to the throat chakra, there was a heaviness right up in here. And it's like I was about to explode. It was so heavy. Well, I wasn't about to explode, but it was just so heavy. And I'm wondering if I don't want to mess it up.
You can.
What did that mean? Because it was so heavy, and
Did you swallow?
I did, but it's still, I guess I had to keep swallowing it before it would leave me. But it was so heavy. Huh?
But did it leave you?
Well, the pressure was relieved a little bit, but I still feel the residuals of it, like right up in here. So,
Where did it start?
what do you mean, the heaviness? It was
With
here.
with the words that were spoken, and then it traveled through the chakras. So now what you gonna birth out of it? Don't even try to figure it out.
I just believe we're on the cusp of something. Something's about to happen.
I think that is already happening.
Okay.
I really do. I think the manifestation of it is all we're looking for. Let me show you what I'm saying. How many of you have heard of the term ancestor worship?
I've heard that before.
Do you know what that means? It has come to me. Go ahead.
I think it evolved into something negative through the European eye. But in the traditional African sense, it wasn't ancestral worship. It was communing with those spirits for wisdom and for knowledge and understanding. But all of that has gotten a negative connotation through the European interpretation of what was happening.
May I change one word? It evolved. It's actually becoming one with the energy that has exited a body before you. That's all it is. But it developed to that because they didn't care to understand.
No.
And it was an effort to diminish your importance. That's why it is so important for religious existence for you to be called a Christian, a Muslim, a Buddhist, etc. Because now that has become your identity.
I was just thinking about this the other day when I forget what I was thinking for it to lead into that, but I was thinking how when the missionaries that went into Africa, they thrust all of their culture and cultural beliefs aside and said, you have to believe this now. And they never tried to understand what their beliefs were all about. They just said, you have to do this. You have to believe this way. You have to take a Christian name, blah, blah, blah. And if we don't do it, if you can't do it that way, then here's my gun. You better do it.
That's your question. When we first went into Africa and the other indigenous places, what did the people believe?
Sage, speak up, please.
What did the people believe when they went into those places?
They
Everything.
believed in communing with their.
What did they call it? Nothing.
Okay.
What did the The Africans called
Yeah,
it?
nothing. They labeled it as nothing.
No, they didn't.
There were no labels at all.
Mm-hmm.
With labels comes walls. With labels comes a loss of identity.
Yeah.
With labels comes a submission, which is a worshiping of doctrines of those who presented those doctrines to you. That's what labeling does. To free yourself from a label is to be free indeed.
I was thinking.
Yes.
I was thinking also the one thing they did not take away was, of all the missionaries that ever went into Africa to whatever they do, they never took away dancing. But we came here and we learned that according to Christian belief, you weren't supposed to dance. But the missionaries that went over there, they could never take that away.
Well, they couldn't for two reasons. One, it was so pervasive,
Right.
and two, it was entertaining to them.
Yeah, true.
Because even during slavery, you danced.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening. James Brown, his biography. One of the things he did for Nichols was dance, for their entertainment. So what did they do on Saturdays? You danced and got drunk, so they could control you because that was an off day for them as well. On Sunday, you went to church with them and sat out front in the praise house or whatever. So those things were not taken away for selfish reasons.
Mm.
If it had been because something they could not get out of them, they would not have taken the drums away.
They tried to.
Oh, of course they did, but they never tried to take the dance away because they didn't understand the nature of it. And people who shout in church are doing exactly what's done in Africa.
Yeah.
When they invite the spirits in, they're doing exactly the same thing. And the rhythmic beats are the same. So again,
Well, but you could do that to a certain degree. But if you in the evangelical church, in the beginning, you couldn't. If you accepted that, you couldn't dance.
no, anything that
You couldn't.
is called, to me, I call it cultural genocide.
Yeah.
Anything that made you feel like a human, they took it away. Anything that gave you identity
Right.
with your origin,
Identity.
they took it away.
Mm-hmm.
So, the power of the African tribe was the female. She was the centerpiece of it. So, this is the first thing you do. Who do you think introduced rape as a means of breaking a race of people or a group of people? Who do you think introduced that? And it came from the same ones who stigmatized the menstrual cycle. Same people. If you look at the scriptures, especially more precisely the scriptures that talks about Jesus, if you look at all the scriptures in the Old Testament that talks about sacrifice and worship, the common thread is everything between Abraham and the advent of Jesus is out the window. All of these holy days, all of these rituals like Hanukkah, Purim, all these days, all those days are priestly days. All those days are designed to manipulate. And if you see the Sumerians and the southern kingdom, the Sumerians had no holy day. Like all, the Jewish calendar and all of that. They had none of that. But the southern kingdom did. And they were considered the crazy ones. But they had none of that.
Didn't they have the one where they had to go to the temple?
They went to the mount of Israel.
Right.
And
That was only like once a year.
yeah, once a year they went to Israel. And Zion, whatever it was. But even when they went there, it was because of the Passover.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the once a year. And that was in remembrance. When you look at the writings of Isaiah, he even talks about the fallacy of worshiping the Sabbath.
Mm.
It's simply amazing to me how these things have been always right in our face, but because we have been so profoundly indoctrinated, we have seen only what we were looking for, even subconsciously, until now. Well, look at when you look at the Samaritan that Jesus went to, what do you see? You see a woman with the issue of blood, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see a woman at a well, right? What do you see with me? You see 10 lepers. They were Samaritans. The woman was being ostracized because of a natural event in her body. The issue of blood. The woman at the well was considered a concubine. The men were diseased.
Yeah.
You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The men were diseased. And the only way that they could be delivered from this disease was for them to hear the words of Jesus, to embrace them.
So did the man deny the power of the woman, or they just didn't know?
They were raised to.
But
It doesn't matter. It
Okay, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Jump off the roof and
Okay.
don't go by gravity.
I
It doesn't
got
matter whether you know or not. Natural laws prevail, regardless. That's why we have to be cognizant of how we speak to each other, about things around us, because it matters.
So religion respect the natural laws, but not the universal law.
Our religion don't respect the natural laws.
Okay.
Religion respects the natural laws that they can control.
And that they created.
They ain't created.
They didn't create that
No.
either. Okay.
They respect the ones that they cannot control.
Still, the thing that strikes me about the woman with the 5 husbands is, when I was growing up, every time I heard that lesson, it was a focus on this woman
Yes, they created
who had, who had these 5 husbands. Look at her. She had 5 husbands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was always about denigrating that woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we couldn't see the reality.
And that's not even the point of what it was talking about.
Yeah.
No.
The point was freeing that woman.
Yeah.
Actually,
Oh,
and
man.
freeing that
All
woman.
her entanglements.
Yeah.
Well, actually freeing men from theirs.
Well, once she got free, she free.
Yeah.
So it's I'm enjoying what I'm seeing now, because I'm seeing the freshness of what's here, and understanding the power in it. When Jesus said, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. When you think about what he was saying, there were, to this day in that part of the world, giant cobras, snakes and they had a high gloss, so the sun reflects off them. And when they would bite, they sting from the poison, hurt really bad. And all he was saying was, when you look at the serpent, you would be healed from the bite. What he was saying was overcome your fear. When you overcome your fear, it cannot hurt you. If you are afraid of the serpent, you're not going to look at that one on the staff. You're going to look at the one around that's biting you. Overcome your fear. That's all we're saying. The greatest shackle is fear. Fear. Why is it that people won't listen at what you see in the scriptures? Because of the fear of losing what they think it is saying. Fear. What would I have to hold on to if I don't have this? Well, that's addiction. That's not conviction. That's addiction. If you don't have this, you're fainting for it. And you don't even know what the this is. It's one thing today and something else tomorrow. It's diminishing the beliefs of one person over someone else. It's an attitude, especially with female. It's an attitude of, at last we accepted, now we can preach. Yeah, that kind of thing. That's crazy. But that's the embracing of it. And even with at the foundation of all of this, that still is not in place. Because you're not going to do that in evangelical church. Right. That's just not going to happen.
And if you do, you perpetuate what they've been teaching.
Well, you have to teach it.
Yeah.
So this is where we are in terms of our experiencing the reality of what is. Because I don't believe that you can intellectually submit to anything other than those things that you have created. We have to submit spiritually, and that spiritual submission is simply being open for the light of the truth, regardless of how challenging it may be. It doesn't matter. If it's not challenging, is it worth having? So, are there any questions? Since you've been quiet.
I was just looking at her.
What is it?
Well, first I was just trying to figure out when menstrual cups were invented.
Menstrual what?
Menstrual cups.
Oh, okay.
No, I was at the moment you asked, I was thinking about this concept of women being cursed, and just wondering like how the scriptures were misunderstood. And I got here late, so I may have missed that.
I don't mind reiterating. I really don't.
But what is that?
At the onset, we were talking about how the Levitical law did that.
The what law?
Levitical law. Leviticus. See, the book that's called the Bible is the truth. And what I mean by that is the truth about the nature of how man walked, what the Creator intended, as well as the truth about what the Creator intended. And I don't believe that the priests had a clue as to what they were supposed to do when it was the priesthood was instituted. I also believe that a lot of what the priesthood did came from Egypt, but was augmented by their beliefs, their meaning those of Israel who were in the wilderness. And I believe that a woman's cycle was simply used to put her in bondage as an opportunity to separate powers, with one being dominant over the other. If you look at Abraham, even Isaac and Jacob, you don't see those kinds of divisions and separations. You don't see that. Sarah says, how can I have a baby? I'm not even menstruating anymore. Didn't she say that? I'll be on the year, didn't she? I'm not even menstruating anymore. She said, what? Yeah, she said, I'm not menstruating anymore. And she was not rebuked by Abraham. So why is it that she could say that, you know, in his presence? And why is it that she could have such dominance in relationship to how he dealt with Hagar? You see,
Yeah,
in Ishmael, how could she have that kind of dominance? And yet, we look at what happened with the Levites. They wrote what they chose to write. The things that they felt they could control, they controlled them. They are no different than the European Christians are today, as well as Muslims. The things that they prohibited are the things they were doing.
They don't pay Muhammad any attention really.
Not really. The things that they were that they railed against are the things they were doing. That's the same thing that happens today. As time went on, women were put in a submissive, subversive position more and more. The shackles got stronger, the abyss got deeper. And when you get to the place where the scripture talks about the heavens being shut up, is there a word from the Lord? Mm-hmm. Well, is it not funny that the word that came from the Lord came from the mouth of the man who came to reassert the power and presence of the female? Mm-hmm. So when the Lord spoke, the Lord didn't speak to the priests. He spoke to the ignorance or the adversity that the priest had created. That's what he spoke to. Mm-hmm. But if Jesus was speaking, even if those who say he 100% go, okay, what you say? Oh, well, he's the prophet, which he is. It doesn't matter how you term it. He spoke the same words. And the words that he spoke were words that tore down every barrier between females. Think about this. He dealt with adultery. He dealt with the menstrual cycle, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He dealt with concubines, but he did not deal with homosexuality. Wonder why? Have you ever thought about that?
No.
Why? Why
they record everything he dealt with though?
No,
Do we-
they didn't. I'm gonna tell you why. I
Dealt
believe-
with it in terms of speaking to it.
Yeah, I'm sure why I think he
Dealt with-
did. Because he understood something that we are just now beginning to understand. When the presence and power of the females is reasserted, all that take care of itself. All that is handled. No woman has ever said stone a homosexual. No woman has ever said stone anyone for that matter.
It's true.
So when you get past this thing of feeling dirty because your period is on, when you get past this thing of feeling ostracized because men have played with you in a sexual way, when you get beyond this thing of being ostracized because men are not supposed to talk to you, when you get past this, when you get past all of these do nots that men have put on your shoulders, then you will begin to understand that you are the doer. And the doer births everything positive. Now, let me hasten to say, this does not have a damn thing to do with men and women. It's talking about energies. It's talking about the unicity of feminine and masculine energy. I want to say that with emphasis because I don't want anybody to think that I'm talking about an Amazonian mentality, because I'm not talking about that at all. Has nothing to do with that. Has everything to do with a reassertion of the balance that was brought into being when this entity of Adam was created. And the entity of Dhamma is feminine. And if there's always the second son, if the last comes first, then he created them male and female. So even if you look at it from that perspective, if she came last, she's the dominant one, if that's the way you want to look at it. If that's the way you want to look at it, because she's the second entity or second portion of that. Now, I believe that the reason it's mentioned the way it was is because if that female had been presented first, there would not have been a need for masculine energy. Because with that female comes life, just like that. That's what I believe. I believe that the penetration of a female vaginally is no different than Ein Sof, or the one above, the light that's above every light, creating within itself a vacuum and inserting or penetrating that vacuum with life. And that vacuum is representative of a woman. That's how I see it. Any questions?
I'm thinking about the vacuum part. When we talk about
You're not
the
going to be able to wrap your mind around it.
Well, I'm going to tell you something.
Okay, tell me something about it. I like that.
Because if you think about it, when the penis is penetrated, it's like the female is pulling the penis in. It's like you drawing it inward. It's like a pull. You know what I'm saying?
How you know? You ain't got no pain.
No.
The mess with you.
Yeah.
That's how the muscles work. Though.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
It's the muscles are contracting.
Right.
See, one of the reasons that is pretty easy to tell whether a female has been raped is because of the bruising inside of the vagina. Because if it's unwelcome, she tightens her muscles to keep it from happening and is damaged. The bruising takes place.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the same muscles that welcomes the penis when she is consensual.
Well, yeah, it's like, yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that.
So the drawing of it is not in the sense that we think it is.
Okay.
It's not that at all. It's like two pieces of a puzzle coming together
Okay.
to give you an image of something. When those two puzzle pieces are separated, you can get some semblance of what it might be. But when they are put together, you can see what it is. So when a man and a woman comes together in a physical sense, they are ratifying what has transpired in the other realm.
Okay.
If it's about selfishness, then there is a spiritual block there. And what I mean by that is there's a blockage against the flow of energy from the other side that can enhance the experience, thus bringing something of enlightened value to humanity.
I got you.
And I'm not trying to say that there's no pleasure in it, but the question is, why is there pleasure in it? Why? Why is there pleasure in intercourse?
I never asked, but I just enjoy it. But go ahead.
That's okay.
This girl's right here.
I do too.
Yeah,
Anyway, it doesn't matter. But you know, the reason, think about it. It says that they were placed in the Garden of Eden, east of the Garden of Eden, right? Place of pleasure, right? East of Eden. Eden is the place of pleasure. Suppose
Here you go.
that when physical intercourse takes place, suppose that is an entrance or an opportunity to enter the garden or enter Eden, that place of pleasure, in order to bring light to this earth, which is always pleasurable. However, rather than embrace that, we have embraced the physical pleasures of it without realizing that if there were no spiritual pleasure, there would not be physical. And what I'm saying is that what you feel during intercourse and during the orgasmic moment, what you experience and what you're feeling is the energy that's being transferred between the two, be it selfish or otherwise. If there is sincere desire, then there is grand opportunity to bring enlightening thoughts, for lack of a better term, into this realm and open up the other realm or the upper world for those who have chosen to seek a greater understanding or awareness. Suppose that's just what it's about. Yet, if there is no pleasure there, then there is selfishness there. Because it has to be consensual. It has to be in agreement. You know, two people have to be in agreement. I have spoken with females who have said to me that they thought something was wrong with them because they were not experiencing an orgasm. And the only way they found out something wasn't wrong with them is because they were with somebody who brought them to this state of orgasm. And most females don't know what an orgasm is because we've been taught differently than that. And that being the case, why is it that this female experiences this lack of orgasmic activity, but she does with someone else. Could it possibly be that even though her attitude, her feelings, or emotions are wrapped up in this person for real, but his is wrapped up in his own pleasure? So he has pleasure within himself, but he's not giving. Subconsciously is all about him. Suppose if he becomes conscious of what's happening and says that, you know what, it's not about me. It's 100% about our relationship and what we mean to each other. Then everything begins to change. Why? Because he's not seeking pleasure, he's giving pleasure. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. The first attitude, though, is so common.
Yes.
And men who might seem upstanding and wonderful in every other way will still hold that attitude and not feel like there's anything wrong with that.
And that's because they've been taught to feel that way.
It's very damaging.
It's very damaging. And that is one of the reasons I say to females, if you don't feel it, don't do it. It's just that simple. And it doesn't matter how much I want it. If you are not feeling it, don't do it. One of the reasons, the physical reasons for physical circumcision, one of the reasons was to teach a male the necessity of being able to control his passions. There is no greater method of control of your passions than you being horny like a toad and somebody saying, not tonight. And then you go all week, not this week. And then you got paint on your nails, but at least you control your passion. You don't push, you know what I'm saying? You don't manipulate that in order to get what you want from it. Suppose all that stuff is true. Then if it's true, does that not shift in a huge way our paradigm when it relates to intercourse? If we could get humanity to think about intercourse in that manner, how different would things be? Because we want to, we talk about giving, but we don't talk about it in these terms. Giving of myself. What do you mean? Giving of myself is more than me embracing you and more than me helping you get things done. Giving of myself means that I am totally into you. And even though some of the things I may not agree with, if it makes you happy, it brings you pleasure. That's what I'm talking about. It's transcending the boundaries that have for so long kept people behind this wall, females in particular, behind this wall. And I can remember females saying things to me like, and I counsel a lot of females, stuff like to me, yeah, I went with this person, but they treat me different. What are you talking about? Yeah, my man, he is a provider. He's good to me. All these other stuff. But guess what? He's not affectionate. He will buy me anything in the world, but he's not affectionate. And she says that the one I'm with, we went to dinner, and he showed up with a rose and laid on the table and said, "This reminds me of you." he says things. Men are not affectionate unless they want something. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to come out like that, but it's the truth. It's like, how come you just can't talk to your woman the way that you truly feel? Because men are not taught to express how they feel. Like, I don't trust your heart with anybody except me. Is that the reason you're good to me? No, baby, that's the reason I love you. You see what I'm talking about? Just simple stuff. How come we can't do that? Because we are taught that you are our property. And you do what you choose to do with what? Your property. But when you are me and I'm you, that's a whole different ballgame, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a whole different ballgame. This adage, when mama's happy, everybody's happy, it carries weight if you understand the connotations of it. The connotations of it. All it's saying is 100% of the time is for you to bring pleasure to her heart. 100% of her time is to bring pleasure to your heart. And it's just that simple. Okay.
I'm not
Enjoy.
going to be selfish because I was going to
I
tell
know.
you to finish this, you come go with me. And let the rest of them go home. and I meant that, teacher, so we can continue this conversation.
Okay.
Let me clear that up.
Okay.
But I won't be selfish today, okay?
Okay.
All
I'm
right.
glad you cleared that.
I love y'all.
Well, you stay in awareness as you go where you're going.
Okay. Enjoy your weekend.
Okay, you too.
But can you see the picture I'm trying to paint here? If it's not in your heart, don't do it. That's it. Just don't do it. That's what this idea, this concept of oneness or marriage is about. It's not about I do. It's not about that at all. It's about the depth of a relationship. It's about an experience that goes far beyond a feeling. And it creates a hunger. Well, kids call it a thirst now. I thirst after you. It creates a hunger not for sex, but for the person. Just to be with them. Just to sit across the table from them for 10 minutes. If that's all. It doesn't matter. This is relationship. Any questions about that? Did I miss it?
You know what, you just tied it so, because when you said that, it was like all week I've been in discussion with some people, male and females, about this. And then when you tied it in, when you said, because that's what the kids call it, thirsty, and they use that word a lot nowadays about she's just thirsty, she's just thirsty. But that just makes everything so clear. And that goes back to the thing that a couple of weeks ago when I put out there one there, had the thing from Home Ec book about the woman and what the woman's role is. And all of that, because I've listened so many times when I'm sitting to women and listening to them talk, they just do what you just said. I just go ahead and do it because that's what's expected of the woman.
Told that's our duty.
Yeah, that's your duty. Just even if you don't feel it, just do it. It's almost it's almost like the scene from The Color Purple. Just let Mr. climb on top of you, do his little thing, and then
I mean,
do his business, my man.
And
then what they're hungering for is what you're talking about.
Where did it come from?
Yeah,
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
It came from slavery.
Mm-hmm.
You are a baby machine. You are a pleasure factory. That's what's been ingrained, and that has to change. That has to change. Physical intimacy is not where intimacy begins. It is the result of emotional intimacy, of spiritual intimacy. It doesn't begin there. It may have started Monday and then conclude to Thursday. It doesn't matter, but it begins at some point that you cannot necessarily see, but you can experience it. All right? Any questions? Okay. Don't want to belabor the point, but I do want to make sure that we have some clarity. So that's it. Okay. Thank you, telephone people. I'm done.
All right.
All right. Have a great evening. Rainy, you have a great rest of the morning.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Done.